In this week's Parshas Chukas, we learn about Tumas Meis, that when someone comes into contact with a corpse of a human being, he becomes Tameh. He's considered spiritually impure. And we also learn about how one is purified from this impurity. The Parah Aduma, the red cow, that's slaughtered and then burnt together with an Eitz Erez, an Ezoiv, and a Shni Soilas, cedar wood, a plant called Ezoiv, and the crimson thread, and that's all mixed with living waters, Mayim Chayim, that are drawn directly from a spring or a river, and then sprinkled on the Tmei Meis on the third and seventh day of his Tumah, and so he's purified. It's noteworthy that the Torah first teaches us about the Parah Aduma and all the laws of the Parah Aduma. And only many psukim later, the Torah tells us that one who comes into contact with a mace becomes Tameh. This is obviously not the chronological order, because first one becomes Tameh, and only then do we sprinkle on him the Meichatos, the waters that are mixed with the ashes of the Parah Aduma. It's also not the logical order, because how can we be taught about a solution before we've been told about the problem that it's coming to solve? The Parah Aduma is coming to solve the problem of Tumas Meis, and we haven't yet been taught about Tumas Meis. It would seem that there's a higher order. There's a level where the Parah Aduma is not just serving as a solution to Tumas Meis, but on the contrary, one acquires Tumas Meis because he's in need of the purification process of the Parah Aduma. Sounds complicated, but you know that this parsha is complicated. We know that it's Chukas HaTorah. It's a decree that's beyond human comprehension. As Rashi says, Chuko chokakti, gzeiro gozarti, ve'ein lecho reshus lahare rachreho. But I'll try to explain what I mean by saying that there's an order where one becomes Tameh by divine providence in order that he should go through the process of purification. Why is a mace metame? Why is coming into contact with a dead body? Why does that contaminate? Why does that defile a person? Why does that make me impure? Actually, there's a Sifri Zutta that says that a mace is not tameh, a mace is not impure. It's only that one who touches the mace, or one is under one roof with the mace, becomes tameh. The mace himself is not tameh. So why is it that coming into contact with a mace makes me impure? It would seem that the exposure to the finite nature of human existence brings down the human spirit. One can lose his faith in life. One can lose his lust for life. One can lose his spirit to go on. As Koheles says, in Koheles 3:19, Ki mikre bnei ha'adam u'mikre ha'behema. Certain things happen also to bnei adam, also to humans, and also to animals. U'mikre echad lahem. But one thing happens to both of them, and that is ki mois zeh kein mois zeh. Like this one dies, like the animal dies, so also the human dies. V'ruach echad lakoil. They both have the same life spirit. U'moisach ha'adam min ha'behema oyin ki hakoil hovel. Man's superiority over animals becomes nothing, for it's all worthless. And as he goes on and says, Hakoil hoylech el mokoy mechot, everything goes to the same place. Hakoil hoyo min ha'afar, everything came from the dust. V'hakoil shov el ha'afar, everything goes back to the dust. So we can become overcome with a feeling that life is meaningless and everything we do has no worth, has no value. Therefore, when one encounters human mortality one-on-one, he's considered contaminated. His spirit is defiled. How is he purified? Should we be in denial? Should we ignore the sad truth that Hakoil hoylech el mokoy mechot? We sprinkle on him the ashes mixed with mayim chayim, living waters. I think that this is as Koheles continues in the next pasuk. Mi yoidea ruach bnei ha'adam ha'oilo hi lemolo. V'ruach ha'behemo ha'yoiredes hi lemato. Meaning that in spite of the similarity between man and beast, however, who though is aware that it's a person's spirit that rises upward to heaven and the animal's spirit that descends downward to the earth? There are indeed two sides to human existence. Ashes on one side and living waters on the other side. You know that when mourners return from the burial of their loved one, the halacha is that they can't prepare the first meal for themselves. It's called the Sudas Havra'ah, the Suda that's meant to heal them. And that Suda, that meal has to be prepared by other people. What's the idea? It might be that when mourners come back from the burial, their spirit is down and out, seeing the mortality of man, seeing that Hakoil Shov El Ha'afar, it all goes back to dust. We want to expose them to human kindness. Because in human kindness there's an expression of Ma Hu Rachum Af Ato Heyei Rachum. Ma Hu Chanun Af Ato Heyei Chanun. Human kindness is an expression of the Tzelem Elokim, of man's being created in the image of God. In human kindness we see the eternal side of the human spirit. In spite of the fact that Hakoil Shov El Ha'afar, the Ruach Ha'adam is Oilo Hi Lemolo. If man is capable of giving, of caring for others, of doing for others, that teaches the mourners that there is hope, that there is meaning to human existence. So the Poro Aduma, the Eitz, the Ezoiv, and the Shnisoy Las end up being just ashes. However, in man there's not only the side that becomes ashes and dust, but there's also the living waters meaning waters that are drawn directly from a spring or river. Waters that are connected to their source are defined as living waters. As long as we are connected to our source, there's eternal life. So the approach to death is complex. Most of us usually, may I say, are in denial. We live kind of with the illusion that life in its present form is just going to go on forever. And that can cause us to act irresponsibly. So somebody that ignores the mortality of man too much, divine providence arranges for him to come into contact with a mace, to see face to face human mortality, to remind him of the Yom HaMisa. But that's just the beginning of the process, because there has to be a balance. So his spirit is defiled, because he becomes, so to speak, too depressed. So then we have the Para Aduma, in which we mix the living waters together with the ashes in order to create the proper balance in one's attitude towards death. Death, human mortality, the finite nature of man should have a presence in our life, but not an overbearing presence. So that on the higher level, on the deeper level, Tumas Meis actually comes in order to bring me to the Tahara that's achieved through the Para Aduma. So that really, in a sense, the Para Aduma, in terms of the logical order, the Para Aduma comes before the Tumas Meis, because it's only in order to come to the Para Aduma that I became Tamei in the first place, because I needed this purification process. The Kohen that sprinkles the Meichatos on the person becomes Tamei. This is the paradox, the famous paradox of the Para Aduma, that the Para Aduma purifies the impure and contaminates the pure. The Kohen that's Mazeh, that sprinkles the Meichatos, becomes Tamei, because the Kohen, as a healthy person with a healthy attitude towards life and death, doesn't need the exposure. Therefore, he becomes contaminated and needs to be purified from that. But it's the Tmei Meis who needed to create the balance in his life. For him, the Para Aduma is Mitaher. So that awareness of death in the proper measure not only shouldn't be bringing down the human spirit, but to the contrary, inasmuch as we recognize the limits of life in its present form, we understand how important it is to make every moment eternal. We realize that the moment that we cross over the threshold from life to death, everything we took for ourselves in this world loses its meaning. Hakoil shov el ha'ofar. It all goes back to dust. What has eternal value is what we gave to others. Every smile we put onto every face, every act of kindness, every act of giving, that's what lasts forever. That's the Ruach Ha'odom Ha'oilahi Lama'alo. So, we're reminded to embrace eternal life. A guten Shabbos.